Welcome to MojoPlays, and today we're taking a look at the 10 hardest PS5 games. Regardless if they were cross-gen or exclusive, these PS5 games might give you a hard time. What do you think is the hardest game you can play on PS5? Did it make our list? Let us know down in the comments. Before we begin, we publish new videos all week long, so be sure to subscribe to MojoPlays and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. Demon Souls. Was this the first game you thought of when we started this list? It was for us too. It's kind of the obvious choice if you want a PS5 game that can go hard on you early in the game. That isn't a complaint either. Demon Souls can be great fun, especially if you're playing with friends. The only reason some might disagree is if one may not be familiar with the format of Dark Souls, Bloodborne, and the like. Plus, From Software fans have often stated how Demon Souls, even in its remake form, is significantly harder than the rest of the Soulsborne games. God of War Ragnarok.
Got him!
Of course, we could lump everything into the gimme God of War difficulty because why not? I mean, we could just say, yeah, play it on that difficulty and call it a day. However, Ragnarok might be more challenging for some due to occasionally clunky movement and camera placement. And by the time Atreus or Mimir warn you of an enemy attacking behind you, more often than not, it's already too late. It can sometimes make combat more challenging than it probably should be, and if you plan to take on King Hrolf and the rest of the optional berserkers, you're in for a rough time.
Won't be getting any more from those.
Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time.
Crash Bandicoot. At last, I, the great Neocortex, have you right where I want you.
Crash 4 was super tough on PS4. Spoiler alert, even with a higher frame rate, the story is no different on PS5. At first, you won't have too much trouble so long as you aren't trying to blaze through every level on your first go, but the later levels might be frustrating for some. From Dingodile's awkward controls to the final few levels chasing after Cortex, Crash 4 can get a bit too demanding at times. And if you want to go for that 100% completion, you will have to beat every single level without dying and go for all of the platinum relics. Ghost Runner. Ghost Runner is absolutely one of the toughest indie games we've played within the last few years. Strange thing is that it isn't even hard in terms of figuring out what to do. For the most part, the difficulty lies within the controls. Just about every action you'll need to do is tied to the shoulder buttons and triggers, and it doesn't exactly feel natural. Sure, you can remap buttons through the PS5 itself, but regardless of how you configure it, it rarely ever seems to make much sense. The game is excellent, don't twist our words, but those controls, man, they take a little bit of getting used to. And I'm somebody who plays a lot of different games with different control schemes. Like a Dragon, Ishin.
後で報いは受けてやる。だがお前らにも女を殴った報いを受けさせてやる。この命知らずが。かかってこい。
The Yakuza... the Like a Dragon series typically leaves the difficulty up to the player. You can play on baby easy goo goo gaga mode, or bump up the challenge to normal or hard, or even the legend difficulty if you're shooting for a tougher New Game Plus. Or if you just wanna, brag about the size of your gonads, but you do you. But Ishin introduces its own harder difficulty, dubbed, Ishin. Under this, enemies deal significantly more damage and take several hits before finally going down. Bosses, on the other hand, can down you in 1 or 2 hits. Ryuga Gotoku made it so hard that they warn you before beginning the game under the Ishin difficulty, recommending you only play this difficulty when going for New Game Plus. You might want to take that advice. Just saying. Monster Hunter Rise. Funny for us to say that Monster Hunter Rise is hard when many would point it out as the easiest Monster Hunter game in the entire franchise. However, even with that reputation, many are still quick to say it can be quite challenging under various circumstances. Many of the changes in difficulty come primarily in the form of refinement in UI and controls. You still have plenty of formidable beasts to hunt down, and none are gonna go down without a fight. That said, the same level of challenge found in previous games still remains in Monster Hunter Rise. Menus and controls just aren't as cumbersome as previous entries. But don't expect it to be a cakewalk either. Marvel's Midnight Suns. Midnight Suns will kick your ass. Sorry to come out with the most blunt statement about it, but it is the honest truth. At first, the combat can feel very restrictive, as you can only play so many cards each turn. Plus, interacting with the environment and using some cards will cost you heroism. In other words, the order you play cards and perform actions can drastically affect the outcome of a battle if you play cards too recklessly.
I'm gonna get you!
And if you haven't been spending a good amount of time in the Abbey, you may run into some fights where your fighters feel severely underpowered. Careful and efficient planning is key to beating Midnight Suns. Trust me, I'm speaking from personal experience here. I'm still not done with the game. I have just the 3rd act left, at least at the time of this recording, and it is still incredibly hard, even at normal difficulty, and I have a ton of upgraded cards. Just find your tactics, and you'll be able to take on just about anything. It won't be easy, but it'll at least be easier than if you played it like a regular card game. Neo 2.
And we must all one day leave it.
Simply Google, "Is Neo 2 hard?" and you will find no shortage of players having a harder time with this game compared to its predecessor. Unlike most of our other entries with their complex mechanics or high demands for completion bonuses, Neo 2 gets its notorious reputation for difficulty in a simpler fashion: enemy variety. There are way more enemies with their own patterns than there were in the first game, meaning you cannot approach a combat encounter the same way as a previous one. Well, for the most part anyways. Returnal. Only Housemarque would develop a game so excruciating. We mean that in a positive light, by the by. Returnal is easily the hardest PS5 game to come from Sony's first-party studios. To elaborate, bullet hell games are typically done with a top-down view, allowing the player to see just about every projectile on the screen. This gives them enough time to react and adjust their position. But Returnal, as you can see, does not use that and instead uses an over-the-shoulder camera, which obstructs a good portion of your vision on one side. With so many projectiles flying all over the place, you may as well throw no damage runs out the window. My friend Peppa Pig.
I know. Why don't you help me, Pip?
Help Peppa and Grandpa grow a new plant in the garden.
It's a real test in mental fortitude with this brat following you around. And I can't believe I platinumed this game twice. No, our final entry is actually Elden Ring. It is no surprise that Elden Ring, despite the noticeably large number of players who have earned the Platinum Trophy, is the toughest game to play on PlayStation 5. While the game does give you plenty of freedom to build your character how you want and explore just about any location to your heart's content, there are moments where your stats will affect how challenging certain fights are. If you haven't been investing your stats wisely, you might end up ramming your head into a wall. A strategy guide is almost required if you aren't familiar with From Software's previous games. You thought Demon's Souls was tough? You ain't seen nothing yet, bud.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, there's more where that came from.